Okay, I got the go-ahead. Hi, everybody. This is Mark Vogt. Welcome to the April Chicagoland SharePoint Users Group session. I'm your host. We've got a couple of guest presenters today. One, Tom Novella from Axiomatics, is coming up. We've got some pretty fun stuff to talk about today, although it's not going to be hopefully as crazy as some of our previous sessions. Let's dive in and see what the agenda looks like. What we're going to cover typically, we have some kind of big picture topics about SharePoint, 1 or 2 slides. Then we're going to dive into a vendor presentation from Tom on attribute-based access control, a topic that I think actually is very relevant in this day and age as SharePoint continues to become more and more the preference for content management, and with it is going to come trying to find better and smarter ways of doing the access control. We'll circle around and do recent news and upcoming events. Mike Blumenthal is actually at a conference today, but gave me his slide deck, so I'll cover his Office 365. We haven't heard from Ralph Rivas, so there might not be a SharePoint framework update, but that gives us more time to dive into the Microsoft PowerApps 1-year revisit. Hey, it's just a little over a year old, everybody. Let's see how far it's come, and then dive into a couple of tiny little demos about what I think are some of the coolest features to come out in 2017. Lastly, we'll follow up with BYOB, the Bring Your Own Problem section, which is an open discussion. And it looks like we've got 2, 4, 6, 7, at least 7 or 8 people attending today. And a number of those names look completely new, so it should be interesting to see what's going on. Remember that we mentioned last month we were going to be moving away from Meetup. That's still underway. But what I want you guys watching for is that you may see postings on our Meetup site saying that we're going to start shifting over to LinkedIn. It might not be a hard and fast cutover. It might be going back and forth for a month or two, but please watch out for that. Next, we talk about a little bit more big picture stuff. It's always been on my mind to try to come up with a way of describing what you should be doing with SharePoint in order to derive the fastest, the biggest possible ROI on your investment. And what came up with was, I always hear people saying, something's not the cake, it's the icing. And it suddenly dawned on me that might be a pretty good visual to offer up about SharePoint. If you look at the 4 major areas SharePoint's being used for, collaboration, enterprise search, excuse me, content management, and applications, where you're building and deploying and delivering custom applications in SharePoint, they all fit some very obvious portions of that imaginary cake, where the biggest one, gargantuan far and away, is collaboration. The ROI that you derive from business applications is always going to be necessarily small, because not everyone in the organization is going to be using those applications day in, day out. Same thing goes for content management. You'll still be able to do a lot of management and get an ROI out of it, quite all right. But it's not going to be the big ticket item. Enterprise search, turns out that the people that do use it a lot and configure it do start to get a lot of ROI. But where you spend the majority of your day is in that world of group productivity, that world of collaboration. And that's because SharePoint is not bought for 1 or 2 people in the organization. It's bought for everyone. If they can see it, according to Microsoft, if their laptop can see your SharePoint environment, you're paying for it, which means the only way you're going to get a big ROI is to get everybody using it day in, day out. You're going to use your email, you're going to use Office, you're going to use PowerPoint, you're going to use Excel for hours a day. You're going to use SharePoint in order to get into that content, in order to interact with those projects, those processes. The truth is, if you're not using SharePoint for group collaboration, group productivity, then you're actually missing out on its primary purpose and your adoption, and hence your ROI is always going to be a struggle for you. Enough said. Next big picture item, and this segues into why we're talking again about PowerApps, is this. The fact is, developers in any organization are always wildly outnumbered by their users. They're never going to be able to keep up. There's no situation, no scenario in which the developers are ever going to be able to work fast enough to deliver all of the solutions that all of the users demand. But if you're smart, even if MTech or companies like us step in and try to supplement, to complement your developers, we're still woefully outnumbered. It's only when you recognize that you have all of these power users, typically a 1 to 4, typically a 1 to 5, a 1 to 6 ratio of power users for all of the general users. When you start to acknowledge and empower those power users with tools like SharePoint Designer, with tools like InfoPath, with tools like Excel, with tools like, yes, you guessed it, PowerApps, that's when you start to turn the tables, and suddenly this hybrid triangle actually ends up delivering like a 1-to-4 or a 1-to-5 ratio of developer or development talent to users talent. Then you end up being able to satisfy the needs of those businesses. And this has always been Microsoft's plan, its vision, is to deliver tools out to those power users so they can address the needs of the business users, and the developers spend their time actually empowering the power users, not necessarily developing directly to the users themselves. Keep that in mind as we continue to look at products like PowerApps and why we continue to see a lot of focus there. It's all about trying to leverage that group of power users. Next, we're going to dovetail over to Tom Novello from Axiomatics, where he's going to talk about a topic called attribute-based access control. Deanna, do I need to hand it over? I'm going to change presenter.
Nope.
Over
to Tom. Go ahead, Tom. You can go ahead and share.
There we go.
Sure. Great. Well, first of all, thank you all for entertaining us this afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and share with you some of the things that we're seeing in the marketplace. Obviously, SharePoint is exploding. We're seeing more and more use cases out there in the marketplace as companies continue to share mission-critical information, such as diagrams, marketing plans, in some cases in pharmaceuticals, collaborating in the FDA environment with drug trials where they're sharing information about drug trials and processes that are critical to them getting a product to market. And one of the things and challenges that happens within SharePoint that we're seeing is that as companies are communicating and organizations, even federal agencies are communicating, SharePoint has enabled this global collaboration. And then the question becomes, how do you manage it? How do you secure it and know that you're able to know with confidence who has access to the right information? And increasingly, we hear more and more about insider threats and security, and the threat is real, and it's costly. 3% of incidents are expected to exceed $2 million in fines or even damages to an organization, according to crowd research, and 28% of attacks are insider attacks, and 17% of those are, in fact, insider mistakes. And so, how do you manage that today? And one of the interesting stats that came out of Pomon Institute and IBM's most recent data breach study in 2017 was 62% of employees reported having access to data they shouldn't. And so that's really put security on the radar of collaboration organizations, as well as CIOs, CISOs, and business unit executives, where they're looking to curtail access to applications, sensitive and confidential data, but also cloud-based applications and infrastructure. So one of the challenges that we've identified, and there are primarily 5 major areas of access challenges in SharePoint specifically, is preventing site sprawl. How do you control who can spin up various sites and collaboration environments without and not let that get out of control, while at the same time having nested permissions within domains where you could accidentally leave a domain open to an exploit, but also governance, especially with the amount of critical data that's being shared now collaboratively, globally in these environments. Being able to know who, how, where, and when someone's being able to access this information is critical to the success of an organization and preventing data from leaving an organization. And then ownership and having compliance and a legal review process where you have auditability around this environment. And it's becoming increasingly more important as companies are sharing country to country, team to team, that they have these types of controls in place. So then the question becomes, how do you encourage collaboration under these circumstances? And it's about adopting policies to help drive access control, getting fine-grained, meaning you know who, when, how, and where somebody can interact with your data, but also managing the levers, the joiners, and even the movers within your organization. In particular use cases in a large manufacturing organization here out in Chicago, out in the western suburbs, we have an organization that shares design specs, but as people move from project to project, the access is not following them dynamically within the organization. Therefore, there's an exposure of information that is exposed. And being able to audit and know with confidence that you've provided not only legal, but the business unit, the protection that they need to be able to report back. In the case of pharmaceuticals, being able to certify to the FDA that subject one at the beginning of the FDA process no longer has access once the trial goes to another level within the FDA approval process, that you can go back to them and certify that your process has been followed. Otherwise, it's considered a tainted process and you have to start all over again with billions of dollars at stake. So attribute-based access control is critical to know who, what, where, when, and why, and how somebody is accessing this information. And what Axiomatics enables you to do is define policies, build them in reasonable business logic, and then deploy them and enforce them. And it has to be something that's very simple. So one of the things that we focus on is what we call the 3 E's of access control, and in particular in this use case, SharePoint. It's got to be fast and easy to deploy and implement. It's got to be flexible, meaning that you can define policies based on regulatory compliance, business unit compliance, and then be able to deploy and enforce. So one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is the simplicity of our technology in driving an effective dynamic solution that's going to follow your users through their evolution as an employee, as a mover, joiner, lever to an organization, but also as based on their access needs to collaborate within the organization. But you also are now able to enable collaboration, because as you're defining these processes, you're no longer tied to domains and nesting domain access, and being able to have that flexibility within your organization to encourage the type of collaboration you want as an administrator and within your business. So we were founded in 2006. We are headquartered out of Stockholm, Sweden, but our U.S. headquarters is right here in Chicago at 525 West Monroe. And we have a global organization. We are working with the federal agencies out there. You could probably name quite a few, as well as a lot of commercial organizations. And SharePoint has become a more and more critical focal point of many of our customers. As I alluded to, manufacturers trying to protect design data, pharmaceutical companies trying to protect FDA requirements, and all in an auditable environment. And we look forward to perhaps entertaining or speaking to you folks further, but I'm hoping that hopefully you see the contact information up here. Again, my name is Tom Novello, and I also have Stacy Hunt, who is our National Business Development Manager. We'd love the opportunity to learn about your particular use cases and see how we might be able to help provide dynamic access controls to give you the flexibility you need to drive further collaboration within your business. With that being said, I'd be happy to field a few questions or turn it back over to Mark and the team.
In the interest of brevity, nice presentation, Tom. In the interest of brevity, I think we're going to continue with the rest of the agenda items, but I suspect that there was enough going on that you talked about that you're going to be invited back in the near future to actually run a little demo. Do you think you could fit a demo into another 10-minute slot in the next, like next month or the following month?
Sure, we would absolutely love to, and I'd be happy to collaborate with you to do that and make it applicable to the group.
Sure. Anybody that's dealt with SharePoint for any length of time realizes that while granular control is great, the ability to audit it, the ability to report it, and even maintain and administrate it is a nightmare when you scale up to tens of thousands of site collections, all the websites, all of the lists and libraries, all of the individual folders and subfolders and files that are in there. And SharePoint to date has never delivered a mechanism that makes it easy to understand what you actually have in your hands when you're inheriting, let's say, an environment like that for the very first time. That was the big stimulus, the impetus, everybody, for why I wanted to invite Tom to come and present today. And he did a great job, so expect to see some kind of a demo in the near future. Let's continue. The next one is just a few brief announcements here. We got some stuff on the very top. I want you to focus only on the events on the bottom. May 5th, SharePoint Saturday is coming up in the Chicago suburbs. I'm told it's actually getting better and better. This is its 6th year. And typically they average around 400 or 500 people attending it. This is no small event for a Saturday. So feel free to show up there. I've seen some of the names that are presenting this year. We've got some really big Microsoft names that are actually coming to talk in that little tiny environment. You're going to get an opportunity to get right up close with some really big important people at Microsoft. So if you get a chance, you want to take a look at that. We've got May SharePoint NA out in Las Vegas, and then it shifts across the summer and into the fall. We'll talk more about September and December, but that's enough to give you an idea of what's on the horizon. Once again, I actually get to present at the May 5th SharePoint Saturday, and I'll be talking about PowerApps. If you go here to this website, you'll find out more details. Please feel free to register. They're getting excited, saying that this is going to be one of the best events that they've actually sponsored in 6 years. Michael Blumenthal is actually out today, so he's got an 8-slide slide deck that I'm going to pick up and start playing. We're going to talk about, let's see, I've got to back up a little bit. We're going to talk about things around Office 365 by Michael Blumenthal. Some of the events are coming up, like you said, May 5th, Chicago suburbs, SPNA is in May. Then in late May, we've got an SPNA keynote viewing that Michael's going to be hosting. He mentioned this in our last session as well. There's a Chicago Code Camp in early June. That looks like it would actually be a lot of fun, something to check out. So do a Google search on the Chicago Code Camp, although there might be some other links popping up here that you can come back and retrieve from the video or from the slide decks that we'll post up on our meetup site. Then later in mid-June, we've got DWX. In early August, we've got that conference in Wisconsin Dells. And for those of you that have not gone to Wisconsin Dells in the summertime, this is a place where you bring the wife, you bring the kids, and everybody has a good time. It is a gorgeous environment. If you like shopping, that's the place to be. If you like water parks, that is absolutely the place to be. If you like doing anything else out on the water, out on the lakes and the rivers, like I do with fishing, you want to go to that. Shifting over into early fall, we've got Ignite, followed by the SharePoint Saturday Chicago happening in downtown, and finally the SharePoint Fest in December. A couple other user groups coming up in late May. We just saw that in June 7th. We've got the Caruana Gitimu adopting MS Teams. I don't know about that one yet, but we see the little bit.ly URL there to find out more. One of his users, Mike reported this to me via email, actually had a problem with AD groups, that they are not AD universal groups. You cannot nest them one inside the other. What's the long and the short of it is, in the past, we've used SharePoint groups to define a set of users inside SharePoint, and then we populate that SharePoint group with Active Directory groups, and you end up with a very elegant mechanism for managing at the AD level who has access at the SharePoint level. And apparently there's some problems there related to Microsoft Teams and the team sites that are underneath Microsoft Teams where this doesn't work. We're going to let Mike talk a little bit more about that when he shows up at the May event in mid-May. But we just want to give you a heads up that this is a known problem. It just got reported, and then they're trying to find out more. Goodbye SharePoint newsfeed. It's been deprecated for a while. They're finally disabling it. So it's just a news conduit that's finally genuinely getting sunsetted. Michael's just letting us all know. We got April Microsoft Teams news. You can import your Skype for Business contacts into Microsoft Teams. Hey, that's handy. I just learned a couple of days ago you can also put PowerApps inside Microsoft Teams. That is wildly cool. Let's see. out-of-office messages, improve notifications. You can set retention policies on Teams now, and you can actually install Microsoft Teams using an MSI installer. So there's continued development in this area where Microsoft is absolutely investing hugely to try to come up with this new chat-based approach to collaborative environments. That's the essence of Microsoft Teams. More goodbyes. There's an Office Mix that actually is saying goodbye, and EPS support, that encapsulated PostScript, is going away, deemed insecure and therefore not a good fit for storing inside SharePoint. Lastly, we've got a couple of new workflows that are available, I think, in Office 365, where you can request sign-off, splits, create flows. I'm sure Mike's going to give us a demo on that at the next May event. So much for Michael's stuff today. That's going to allow us to segue back into, let me bring up my presentation here. Ralph Rivas. Ralph, I see you're on today. Is there anything that you wanted to give us from the SharePoint framework? Oops, got you muted. Ralph?
Knock, knock. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Sorry for the hiccup.
All right. Let's see. Can I present?
Yes, you absolutely can. Let me go and presenter over to Ralph. I did it on my end. Is that good, Dina?
Yeah, I did it. We're good. Go ahead.
I'm trying to find the where the presenter thingy is over here. Where are you? Here we go. No, that's the language. Where are you? Present.
I'm having the same kind of hiccups. It's always hard to find the present mode for PowerPoint slides.
Okay, yeah, because it's not. I don't see the drop down, or at least a button or something that says present. And I'm not sure why. Come on, somewhere over here, somewhere over here. Nope. Oh.
Ralph, let me move it back to Mark, and then I'll move it back to you again, and we'll see if that works.
All right. This is the go-to folks need to get it together over here. They're still downloading their app into essentially where every industry analyst says, do not do that. And they have never changed. And
of course,
basically, well, let me give you this one here. If you are able to use the GoToWebinar and click on the link of the meeting and it works just like that, I would be afraid. I would go back and find out, okay, what kind of security are we using? Because chances are, if you're not getting blocked, then you have a breach potentially possible for you. That's what it looks like. I mean, nothing that we can't change it. It's just go-to guys. They just have to fix it. It's easy to fix, right? We click on the link, download, we're done. Still, yeah. You'd think that by now. All right.
Ralph, you should be able to see the panelist window to be able to share.
I see panelist window. Where is panelist window? On the left-hand side. Let me double check because I have a multi-screen thing going and maybe it went to the other screen. That's the other possibility here. And sure enough, I bet. Oh, wait, I saw it. I saw it for just a second and then it disappeared. Sorry, it literally, I clicked on something else.
No, it's fine. I'm looking at a few questions coming in from Craig Hunter about SharePoint newsfeed. Craig, I'll take a look at those questions offline and try to get back to you, okay?
Let me try, if you can go ahead and, I still really cannot see what it is I'm supposed to see, which is.
So Ralph, why don't you go ahead and send your slides to Mark and he can go ahead and pull those up for you. This way we can walk through them.
I'm going to give you a link. Open this link, please.
Hey, you got it. Waiting for it to come.
And share that page.
You're emailing it to me or are you chatting it over?
I chatted it over.
I'm looking in chat now.
In fact, let's chat it to everybody.
Yeah, that might be even better.
How do we say everybody? Oh, great.
There's a drop down to organists and panelists only or to everybody.
Organizers only, presenter only, and then panelists, organizers. And I literally, everybody is not even on my list.
So I have a feeling you might be having some technical difficulties, Ralph, because I don't see anything coming up on chat. So why don't you go ahead and just forward that to Mark via email, and then he can go ahead and bring that up for you.
Okay, stand by.
I have been there before, so I feel your pain.
That's pretty major here. Stand by. Say Mark.
You're probably seeing a blank screen, everybody, right now.
Yep, that's correct.
Just doing a little reboot.
Sending this to Mark right now.
Okay.
It's sent via email.
Is everybody seeing the regular slides?
No, we haven't seen those for a while. I also made a note in the chat, and apparently the chat's not working. So
yes, I can see your screen, Mark. It has Ralph's slide.
Oh wow, I don't even see it. You know, I'm going to have to rejoin. I'll be right back. Let's make this work. Stand by.
Okay. I'm just going to drag a window up with Ralph's patterns and practices page. What he normally steps through, everybody, is this page is your go-to. So if you want to know what's going on, Ralph has been redirecting you for the last couple of months saying, save this to your favorites, be checking it once a week, maybe even daily. That's how fast it's actually updating. And then what Ralph will walk us through every month is he gets a couple of minutes to like pick out some highlights, which is exactly what I do when we talk about PowerApps and other stuff too. Let's see what everybody. Oh yeah, let me go and add this to the chat then, Dina. And that should go out to everybody. It looks like it just did.
It did, thank you. For everybody that's on, if you go to the chat window, you should be able to see the link to that page that Mark told you to bookmark for the future.
We're going to jump in and actually continue until Ralph jumps back on. So what we wanted to talk about next was PowerApps Revisited. If you guys recall, those of you that have been staunch members of the group here for more than a year, is that early last year we were really excited to talk about this thing called Microsoft PowerApps, a new service that dovetails seamlessly into Office 365. What do I mean by that? It means it popped up right inside that little waffle menu in the upper left-hand corner of every one of your SharePoint web pages up in Office 365, right there next to Outlook, right there next to your calendar app was a PowerApps, and you could dovetail it. You could dovetail it and begin building these mobile web apps. I was super excited about it, and that's got only crazier in the last year. So let's take a few minutes and actually look at what's happened since its inception. In early 2016, they had very humble beginnings. This was an agile, this was a consumer-driven environment like you would in open source. It started off as humble and as primitive as that. There was a PowerApps picks list, and Microsoft was already telling people on its community site. They created something called Ask Microsoft Anything, and that pretty much describes everything from 215 into 216. And you're wondering, well, what's to be excited about? Now let's look at what happened in 2017, and this is only one of 2 pages. They developed, this is where PowerApps really took off starting in January, February when you guys first saw it. Were there things to like even back then? Yes. Were there things that were driving people crazy? Absolutely. It wasn't as stable as it needed to be. It was a little slower than we wanted. No, it was horribly slow compared to what we wanted it to be. But then they started coming out with the ability for you to create your own custom APIs. In fact, those APIs started being available as Microsoft flows inside Microsoft Flow. That is fantastic. They started developing production-ready PowerApps apps. They started developing flow administration. They were way more reliable and way more stable as far as the 2 IDEs, the Desktop Design Studio, that IDE, and the Web Studio, which is now my absolute favorite. They had 5 new app templates that popped up around their data source. They developed community blogs. They became large SharePoint list capable. They started reaching out and being able to access international audiences. They popped up an animated pie chart, more work on CDS. They started dovetailing in the ability to create Power App BI reports and dashboards inside PowerApps. This is getting cooler by the moment. Dynamics 365 extensibility came in. Now they're starting to dovetail that ERP system, Dynamics 365, into your PowerApps. They started improving all the galleries. They embedded regular expressions capability. They started actually bringing in Microsoft Flow apps inside here. They developed Azure APIs. One other thing I love is the ability to do push notifications. So now you can have Power Apps that actually trigger flows. The flows trigger push notifications, and hey, you're getting information popped into your mobile device, like your phone, the same way that Twitter sends you push notifications, the same way that Facebook sends you push notifications. You're getting notifications saying, hey, there's something in your Power Apps. It doesn't get cooler than that. They've developed Tab UI, syntax highlighting inside the studio to make it easier to work with. They created an expander control, like an accordion control. They started enabling videos delivered via Azure as a CDN. Native camera access got better and better, and we'll see a little demo of that today. You ended up being able to put Power Apps inside Power BI reports, Power BI tiles, and then vice versa. You can put Power BI inside Power Apps, like we mentioned over on this side. They improved their image slider control, so it was easier to work with and more powerful. They started allowing Power Apps to be embedded on SharePoint pages. That's the wave of the future, guys. Power Apps is going to be poised to act as your replacement for custom forms. It's going to be the replacement for InfoPath, and this is where it started happening, was in late 2017. Power Apps inside Microsoft Teams as well. In fact, now that I remember it, I think I demoed this to you guys several months ago when I was doing all of the individual Microsoft Teams. Nextmo was the next thing that they embedded, text-to-speech. You can talk to your Power App in a nutshell. Cognitive services, text analytics is just a fancy way for saying now they can recognize your face using the camera inside your Power Apps. And you can imagine what that's capable of doing. Let's look. This is the second half of 2017, and it was just as densely populated with achievements. They started enabling Office 365 K1 to have Power Apps and the necessary flow. This is kind of like a 1-2 punch. Power Apps delivers the user experience. Flow is what actually does the work underneath each button click, underneath each little piece of work. You're reaching out to Flow as this service-oriented architecture type of delivery of these services. They improved on the save and the publish. They developed column-level control inside the data tables. They improved the Web Studio yet again. They allowed work with multi-select columns, so you can have multi-volumes inside your columns, more dynamic 365 views, the ability to actually interact with SharePoint libraries and calendars, not merely SharePoint lists inside your Power Apps. To me, that was a huge hurdle to make something production ready that they finally overcame, and you'll see a little demo today where I'm actually going to take a picture with my little Power Apps from my camera and go push it directly into a SharePoint picture library, and you're going to see it happen in real time, all through a flow that gets used as well. They improved on the property panels. Global variables are now a possibility, which was a struggle at the very beginning. Improved Power BI inside the Power Apps user interface. It's getting better because it's getting more popular. Now you can actually export and import your Power Apps using packages. So you can develop in one environment and actually push it to, say, a customer's environment by creating a package that goes up inside there. That was also a huge struggle with trying to make Power Apps production ready. On top of it, they've allowed delegating functions to SQL Server. What do I mean by that? It's not Power Apps that's doing a query across a million rows in the table. It's actually you put the function out, send it off to SQL Server, and SQL Server actually performs the query across the sum, the aggregate, the min, the max, things like that. It does it on the SQL Server side and only delivers the results back on the Power App side. Historically, before that capability, they actually had to perform that query on the Power App side, and that was a huge struggle, you can imagine. Now they've also developed app usage reports. Why would we want to do that? Because users want to know, developers want to know if what they built is actually being consumed by the end users. That's what guides whether or not you improve, whether or not you invest in those applications. Usage reports are what give you, the developer, give you the funder of the development, a window into whether or not this is delivering some kind of ROI. Next, we ended up with some improved string functions, the ability to actually link controls together so you're moving them and interacting in unison. And then came something really cool. Microsoft started breaking up into two different kinds of Power Apps in late 2017. Canvas-based apps that don't have any particular model underneath them, and what they've now termed model-based apps. A model-based app is you focus on the app first. You focus on building a model first, a set of entities that describes the objects in your universe, and the app auto-generates with all of the CRUD operations it would expect to need to interact with that model. That is super cool. PowerApps for SP list forms. This is the big play where Microsoft is saying, hey, PowerApps is going to be used to customize the forms on SharePoint lists. That marks a real turning point that everybody's been wondering about, which is if InfoPath is marked for extinction, what's going to replace it? And now this is Microsoft's answer. It is going to be PowerApps. So start looking into that, everybody. This is what you're going to need. Enhanced date functions came later. Improved mapping APIs for Google Maps and Bing Maps makes it easier to interact with. If you go to the upcoming May 5th SharePoint Saturday, you're going to see me interacting with even a third map API in the little app that we're actually going to build that day. So bring your laptops. There's now an API for interacting with on-premise SharePoint environments. There's a data gateway, so that now your Power Apps can be stored and delivered up in the cloud, but they don't necessarily have to interact only exclusively with cloud hosted data. They can interact with SharePoint on premises as your content store. That was another huge hurdle they had to overcome to make themselves production ready. We've got an improved rules panel, improved image control, the ability to actually do SharePoint attachments, meaning I open up a Power App, I browse, and I'm interacting with a SharePoint list. I'm creating a new record for that SharePoint list, a new row, a new item in that SharePoint list, and now I can add even multiple attachments to that particular item. And now it's seamless and really easy to work with. And more improvements on the camera button, role-based security, and like I mentioned earlier, computer vision and face API is now a reality inside Power Apps. Basically, they've touched on every single thing you would actually want to interact with to build mobile apps that are hosted in the cloud, delivered down to your phones, interact with all the things we know and love, including SharePoint, Office 365, OneDrive, and everything that's underneath there, and still deliver cool pieces of functionality like through Power Apps or through Power BI. What's on the horizon so far? 2018, we see improved row limits on what SharePoint can handle. So they're working on scalability. There's more application templates than ever before as starting points. Application templates that don't even necessarily have to go into SharePoint. They can go into OneDrive. They can go into other cloud storage. They're actually worth a look to continue looking at all of those guys and maybe generate your own version, see what's going on. Big ticket item, they improved on the app load times. Instead of getting stuck and taking minutes, I've been seeing my apps for months now actually pop up in under 15 seconds, which for me is the absolute deal breaker threshold. You have to be able to load in 15 seconds or it's a waste of my time. I'm not going to do it. They've even got offline capabilities that now your phones can actually run Power Apps while they're offline. They're not connected to the internet. That's cool. More Canvas apps versus model-based apps, and we'll have probably a demo on that next month, trying to make you guys understand the distinction between the two, when you might want to use one or the other, so you know where to go from there. SQL Server Views now available inside Power Apps. Just came out this quarter. Simple Power Apps with more flow integration, attachments to SharePoint lists. Sorry, I was doing this last night. That's repeating myself. I must have thought it was cool to repeat myself. That the Power App Studio for web is now generally available for production use. So all the bells and whistles for that web tool, and that's the one I use now exclusively. Lastly, model-driven apps, like I haven't said that enough, and Power Apps for business process automation. It's been a really gargantuan year, this 2017, with Power Apps. A lot of the stuff was all pre-production ready, but now it's easy to say this stuff is all production ready. Is there still lots that needs to be done? Absolutely. Lots that needs to be done. They need to figure out better ways to do testing, better ways to do the deployment and the maintenance, things like that. But it's worth it to start telling your end users that you want to start working on projects that involve mobilizing aspects of your environment using Power Apps. And now I'm going to dive in and actually show you a couple of little favorites that I've come across just in the last year. Probably the first one is uploading camera images directly into SharePoint libraries. The first time I ever heard of Power Apps, the first question I had was, can I take a picture with my phone and put it in a SharePoint library? And the answer, sadly, was a resounding no. And I thought that was just crazy. Well, now it's actually better. And let me go bring up a browser and show you what that actually looks like. So let's see, wrong one. And here it is. This is, I'm in Office 365, and all I did was go to not Outlook, not OneDrive, not SharePoint, not Teams, but I actually went down and actually picked PowerApps, and it actually popped up in its own tab. So you're looking at the PowerApps portal, and I've scaled it up, I've shortened it a little bit, but this is what you see on the Home tab. You see a list of all of the templates that you can use, and feel free to check all of these out because they always act as great accelerators, even if you don't use them all by themselves. But one thing that I had to test was, does the camera control work? Does the access into SharePoint work? So here's just a little demo app that I'll spin up. This is nothing more than a single page app used to test one piece of functionality, and that is, can I actually, there I am, hi everybody. Can I actually take a picture of me, and let me do something I haven't done before. I'm going to do, I can't do that. I have two fingers right here. I'm going to say capture. We see a picture of me being captured. I'm going to click upload, and that needs to go into a SharePoint picture library. How's it going to do it? It's actually going to, under the upload button, everybody, is a Microsoft Flow that catches the incoming data, transforms it into from base64 encoding into binary coding that is a JPEG image, and then uploads that JPEG image directly into a SharePoint library. Which SharePoint library? This one called Camera Pictures. So that, oh, there it is, 411 at 1147. That's actually the picture. It went directly into a SharePoint library. Now, could you add additional fields on here? Absolutely. This is just meant to drive home that one point at how really easy it is to start building truly important applications that people can use out in the field in order to send data from their phones up into SharePoint, including SharePoint libraries. Imagine a SharePoint library with all these pictures and with 20 or 30 fields in there that you're filling out an insurance report, you're looking at different kinds of sites and inspecting them, stuff like that. All that kind of information is available. The second thing that I want to show you guys, let me look at time, 12:43, we're doing pretty good. Last thing that I thought was a bonus was this seamless PowerApps calling Microsoft Flows. This is actually the ultimate wave of the future, everybody. This is where mobile apps are going to be. The apps are going to be hosted up in the cloud. They're going to be delivered with a very small footprint. There's not a lot of heavy lifting on what goes down into the phone. There's not a ton of code going down there. The code that actually does the heavy lifting is also back up in the cloud, where it can be scaled, where it can be duplicated, where it can be managed, so that this program that comes down to your phone is more or less a brain, but you're not trying to encapsulate all of the business logic there. The business logic is going to be captured in the cloud. Typically, it's going to go into something like Microsoft Flow, so that when you have something like a simple application with one little button, that button is going to be able to be wired up to a Microsoft Flow. The Microsoft Flow you're going to be able to design inside the Flow Studio, and that Flow Studio is going to give you access to all kinds of functions that you never thought possible. All kinds of data functions for performing transformations. There are literally hundreds of flows, literally hundreds of web, think of them as web services that you can pass parameters into from PowerApps very, very easily. It's very seamless the way that this all happens, and actually deliver an answer back inside the PowerApp so that you can continue working, which means that now you can take advantage of people creating all kinds of flows out there that you simply consume, but you don't have to code from scratch. So there's only one copy of it somewhere. There's only one solution to that problem, instead of endless repetition of all of these kinds of web services that we all know and use inside our applications on our mobile devices. There's only one set of it, and now Microsoft has achieved that inside PowerApps. That's absolutely amazing. I want to come back to this slide, but I want to give Ralph his due time. Ralph, are you back, and do you want me to bring up that slide deck or that page for you?
You can try giving me presentation, see if it does work this time really quick, but otherwise hang on to that page.
Okay.
Go ahead and try to give me rights. If it doesn't work, then you can continue from this point.
Give you
and
Ralph, it's sent to you.
All right, Windows 10. Where are you? Share my webcam? Nope. Save the screenshot? Nope. Nope. Take it back. Go ahead. Take it back.
Will do.
Still not working. Not sure. Well, you know what's that special link that you guys gave me? That's something that was new. Usually, like, we just have a shared panelist link. Maybe we should do that next time.
Yeah, there is no shared panelists, Ralph. It's every individual has their own, but we can talk about that offline.
Right. Yeah. So that's a different one. Okay. So let's start from here. Okay. So here's the one thing that I mentioned in the last one. If you had joined our heroes last episode, we showed you this little thing, the update. Basically, if you go to dev.office.com/blogs, and that becomes your homepage from this point out, all right, you'll always see that this is out there. This one particular blog. Every month there will be a month date update. You can almost program against it. This will be their way of the future going forward. So they, but what they're doing, of course, is they're just simply just stocking everything into it. So as useful as it is, let me point out to specific items that are in here that are of note, because it almost feels like when you're looking at this maybe from one month to the next, you're watching grass grow. It doesn't feel like there's many changes. Is there anything really significant? Now, mind you, significant things will happen. And let me tell you, the obvious times when they change in such a drastic way, and they save it for when Ignite comes around, when the SharePoint conference is around, essentially twice a year when they do anything groundbreaking. Once in a while, though, they will make something that, because it's delayed or whatever, they finally come out with something and they're good. All right, so
that's why we have you on every month, is that you're the one that draws our eye back to the key part page, so we stay in lockstep.
So here's the thing, though. Always, if you are doing, oops, it went away. Let's go back to the page, please.
Sorry.
You went to your presentation, I think.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah, let's stay at your page for a moment. Okay, so here's the thing. If you are serious about doing development stuff, you need to keep up with this. And one of the key things that I'd like to point out on this one, another shout out in case it hasn't been cleared from before, is again, if you're really caring about this stuff, you're going to want to at least have a representative or somebody attend the SIG. So let's scroll down over here. Just go scroll down one page at a time just to see. Okay, here we go. Go up a little bit. And you'll see over here, there's like not just a webcast, but go up where it says monthly calls. Here we go. You see over here where it says general, CSOM, PSL, weekly call, interest groups, and everything else. Those are the actual links that give you the ICS files to open up the meeting invites for the Skype calls that come in. You can actually, basically, the actual, unlike, for example, if you send an email to, say, Vesa J and say, hey, my stuff is not working, or you go to the GitHub and you post an issue or everything else, this is where they're actually talking meeting. You go on the chat, and literally it's a bit of a free-for-all there, but they actually respond. If you're going to get any immediate support for something, or at least we're going to look at it later, or something that says, okay, I really found something, this is the place to be. You got to attend.
So you can really opt into this call without being invited. You can invite yourself into the call.
Precisely. This is just a link. After all, Skype is just another web app that simply opens up your Skype application. And of course, if you don't have Skype, or if you don't want Skype, and some don't, it will open up the web version of it as well. And it works.
Yeah. So it's like a party line. You could come in on a party line and like maybe get somebody's attention if you're trying to troubleshoot something related to CSOM. Wow.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, it's a who's who of people who attend this lately. Andrew Connell is on this one all the time because they're promoting their Office CLI stuff all the time. So if you're like literally having a monster problem, Waldeck himself, Masterix is on here. Who else is on here? Patrick Rogers. It's like a who's who of all the developers you ever imagine are typically here.
Listening in on a call. So if you came on there, you could say, hey, Matt, Connell, are you there?
You could. Obviously, as they say, the concept of don't overstay your welcome, do not stalk. The usual internet etiquette rules will apply. But this is the one I did want to point out. It's like just on a regular basis. Remember, they have avenues for getting stuff fixed. If it's a real formal fix you're looking for, you go to the GitHub site to get it done. And of course, let's scroll down and you'll see the Git is the next one that's right down there. There we go. See that? SharePoint Dev Ecosystem in GitHub. That's the next thing right after. It's not a coincidence that follows exactly after that, because their concept is, okay, come to the meetings, go to the GitHub. They're literally saying, come to the meetings, go to the GitHub. So why? Because the meetings we talk, at the GitHub you do. All right? And that's another basically thing that says, if you have something that the SharePoint framework cannot do, you can come to the GitHub and you can change it yourself. Do your own pull requests. You can go crazy. Of course, it's nicer if they do it, right? But, you have to wait.
If you see me hovering over all these links, everybody, and then you look down here at the status bar, these are all links that take you into those different projects in GitHub, where Microsoft wants you to go and get your code, contribute your code, evolve your code with them. Cool.
All right, let's page down one really quick, a few more items to show you here real quick. Supportability, latest changes. Okay, so down here over here, like for example, latest changes. So most of the issues have been with the samples. The big thing that has come out this week, and it says right there, that site design studio red, or the site design bits that have coming out. That is a huge change. What used to be, what we used to do provisioning with, provisioning is one of the biggest use cases for developing, quote unquote, in SharePoint. They are making that super simple. It's basically a JSON file that you're literally creating, where they have literally, you put in commands and everything else. I'm not going to go into the specific details of that, because if you watch any of these videos that they have on here, they'll show you that. But this is a big change. Next
month, you know this. You're gonna you can't say something simple and then not come up with a demo at the next session.
Well, so this is not an easy, not a short demo. This is the thing. But every time they keep trying to demo this, they chew up the entire SIG. So they're trying to do this in even themselves. They have the hour to fill it, to put their stuff in, and even they try to chop it up, and they end up going over every single time. So yeah, sure, we could do that. We can. Here's the thing: if you see this and you like it, please talk in the meetup or feedback to Mark and say, hey, I would like to see a demo on that, something a little more specific. Then we can put something together, because otherwise we're just gonna do a repeat of what the videos in here show anyway.
Yep.
You know, and I don't want to do that. I'd like it to be more specific to what you guys are needing over here, because that just simply wastes your time if you could have just clicked into YouTube and watched it at, you know, whatever speed that you wanted in. I can only talk this fast, really fast. That's about as fast as I can talk. I can't go any faster than that.
That's called Mark speed.
Yes. Okay, so let's going down the list over here. Let's see, column supporting. So just a couple of more minutes over here, and as you can see, just basically gives you the changes on each little item. They get more and more specific over here on exact items. But suffice to say, the biggest thing is the site design pieces that are over here. The cleanups, there's a lot of things that they're doing. All these samples, I remember I told you a lot of the samples are dead, were dead, because they went from the old version to the new version, and if you try to do them themselves, it doesn't really work. Well, they're finally getting to them, just so you know, slowly but surely. But unfortunately, there's still some that are not being done. So again, it's the case of having to do it yourself if you cannot wait. So, and again, the best way to do it is to follow these links so that you can actually get support from these guys. Whatever you do, just sending things traditionally, emailing these folks and everything else, not going to work. If you have a support agreement with Microsoft and you get your TAM and all these people involved, you're probably just wasting time. You're actually going to get faster results going through with like the rest of the community over here.
Jump on the party line. Yeah, get with the community. I'm probably leveraging this now that you reminded me. I have to try to run Office 365, get a list of all the locations for which I am a site collection administrator, and have it return a list of site collections. This is probably the place I'm going to start looking for those kinds of answers.
Right. And so just remember what you pay for, even with ShareGates, or pay for even with ABAC and all that stuff. All this stuff is open. You can do it yourself if you want to. If you want to pay, here's the thing: if you're going to pay for something, you better use all of it. Otherwise, try to justify it later when someone says, "Why didn't you do it this way?" And you know, they'll just come and look at this page and say, "Hey, why didn't you do this?"
All right, Ralph. Thanks as ever for cramming 30 minutes into 10. Wonderful. I'm going to minimize this, and we're going to get into the last couple of stages of today's talk. Thanks. All right, back to PowerApps Revisited. I want to try to open the phones up to listen to you guys talk about whether or not you've been exploring PowerApps. And here's the key points I'm looking for. What's been working for you? What's not working for you? What's still missing in your eyes? What mobile apps are you guys working on? We just want to hear, just briefly, if people are working on, and if not, what mobile apps do you wish you had inside your organization? Dina and Edie, can we try to open up the microphones and see if anybody feels like talking about things like this today?
Absolutely. Just give me 1 second, and I will start to unmute everybody. If you are in a public place and you wish to remute yourself, feel free to do so, but we're going to go ahead and open up all the lines right now. So if you do have any questions for the group here, feel free to go ahead and raise your hand.
Anybody? Cindy, Darren? There's two Darren Newberry. Oh, he came in, he dialed in and he called in. Dennis, Greg, Jerry, KZ, Stacy. Gosh, we got a lot of people today. Has anybody call? Holler back at us. Where are you from, and have you been working on PowerApps at all? And what are you guys doing with it? Abbas, Brian,
Hey, this
Cindy?
is Greg.
Greg, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just working on with the Power App on replicating a list so that we can hide some fields similar to like an in-text form or info path. Putting some rules on who can update the status field.
Okay, so PowerApps, that kind of gives you a little bit more control over what you expose to the end users as far as information in a SharePoint list or library?
Yes, but I'm finding that when you first open the Power App, we see the entire list of all the items. And anything that we want to search on, you can't search on any drop-down fields.
Yeah, but at least so everybody gets a peek and then they actually get obscured.
Yeah, so now I'm finding my approvers are saying, hey, I'm seeing the ones I approved yesterday. Can I get a view similar to the, my approval view that you have in the list, similar to when I open the Power Apps?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's coming down the line.
Greg, is your Power Apps up in Office 365, or are you in SharePoint on premise?
365.
365. You think that you're going to be able to solve all of your problems, or is there any BYOP kind of problems you want to share with the team here? It sounds like you'd like to see an improvement that the end users don't see a peak of all the data followed by obfuscated data. They should see obfuscated data from the get-go. Or is there other functionality you're seeking?
No, something like that. Similarly to the views, only show them their stuff or find a filter that way.
All right. Part of the sessions like this, for those of you that are new, is that we do some seed planning. If time permits, we always try to have a jam-packed schedule. But if time permits, we throw ideas around to try to help other people that are members of this user group. If not, we all walk away using the problem as kind of a seed planting, and we say, hey, let's see if we can solve this or come up with make headway in time for the next session. That's what we might end up having to do today. I still see a couple of questions from Dennis and from Abbas as well. Let me go and bring those down. Do you guys want to open your mics up and talk?
Abbas should be able to communicate, same with Dennis, but that maybe they felt more comfortable chatting. So it looks like they are using PowerApps.
We see that Dennis says Milwaukee here. Fantastic. That we're expanding our reach here. We're just starting to do some work with PowerApps here. I'm working on settings on an on-premise gateway. So you're going to be the guy that's going to get to report back. Dennis, you made the mistake of me volunteering you to talk next month on your progress using the on-premise gateway. Are you interested in that? I take silence to be acceptance. I have to warn you.
He said he's always interested. He chatted it through. I think he's in the middle of an office thing, so he can't communicate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Dennis, you and I are going to work on that. Try to chat me up. You've got my email address. Boss, I'm looking at yours now. We've got PowerApps to connect SQL and update PWA attributes. It works pretty good so far. Cool. Boss, is that the only app that you're working on right now? Or you're using it as an interface to SQL Server?
Can you hear me? This is Abbas.
Yeah, you sound fine.
Yes. Hey, Mark. Thanks. Yes. So far that's one of the kind of enterprise solution we have deployed here in Cardinal Health. We are like a pharmaceutical distribution company in Dublin, Ohio. So it's working pretty well. So we did a couple of POCs. So some of our what I call as inventory management teams, we got some glitches with the different devices. Some of mostly to do with the UI. It works well on iOS, but when it comes to Android, we got some UI glitches. The menu doesn't show up. So we have reported back to Microsoft, and I believe they said they're getting it done in next release.
They've been really responsive, haven't they? When you guys work with devices, you say, do you mean really phones or a larger form factor than that?
Yeah, I mean to say OS devices.
Okay, cool. Hey, you said you were where? You're in Ohio?
Yeah, Dublin, Ohio.
Fantastic. Oh, God, we need another 30 minutes. Everybody's just getting started talking. You guys, we got to. I'm going to be bugging 3 of you guys to give the briefest little demos on some, like a little app on what your apps can do. I understand that we're dealing with proprietary information. It's going to have to be scrubbed, something like that. But it would be a lot of fun to see some of the things that are being worked on. So don't be surprised, Abbas, Dennis, and others, if I bother you via meetup in the next week or 2 to try to see what else can be done as far as some kind of a demo. Let me jump in and cover the last 2 slides of our session.
Hey,
we just
Mark,
got done with
before
Yes.
you do that, I just want to let Jerry know that, Edie will ping you offline just to let you know that we did receive your instant message.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tina. And here's our last wrap up. Don't forget about May 5th. If you're within the sound of my voice, you're close enough to come to the Chicago suburbs. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that attend this event. It will be well worth your time. For those of you that are local, a lot of times, from experience, you can come in and only spend a half a day. Come in and do the morning, come in and do the afternoon, and your day's not completely, wasted. If it's super sunny, you can still have fun and get all of it done. Lastly, end of the session. Do we want as a group, I'm kind of ambivalent on when the next session is. It's going to be a Wednesday, but is it the 9th or is it the 16th? The 9th almost seems too soon. The 16th isn't technically the second Wednesday of the month, but seems like a better timing wise. What do you guys want for the session? Do you want it on the 5th? Do you want it on the 9th or on the 16th? Anybody? You can chat your answers in, I suppose.
So we could also throw this out on the meetup site as well.
16.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think the
16.
middle of the month's a good timing, Mark.
Yeah. Fantastic session, everybody. Great feedback, great interaction. Thanks to Ralph, thanks to Tom, thanks to Mike in absentia, where there is going to be continued focus in PowerApps for the next couple of sessions, just because that's where everything is headed, guys, and we got to start looking at it. Look forward to seeing you in mid-May and watch for updates on the meetup site, okay?
All right,
That's
thanks
it.
everybody for attending. We'll be putting up the recording shortly. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.